Think about the last time you tried to change something meaningful about yourself. Maybe you wanted to wake up earlier and greet the morning with calm instead of chaos, eat better and feel genuinely energized rather than just surviving the afternoon. Stop reaching for your phone first thing in the morning before even a single thought had fully formed. Or finally commit to that one habit you have been restarting at the beginning of every single new year for as long as you can honestly remember. You started strong. You felt the momentum building inside you like something real and durable for the first time in a while. Then one day, something disrupted the rhythm. A stressful week at work, a late night that stretched into another, an unexpected turn in your circumstances, and just like that, the habit dissolved, as if it had never quite existed at all. And the strange, genuinely frustrating part is not that you failed, it is that you could not entirely explain why. You wanted the change, you believed in it deeply, you had every reason in the world to keep going. So what exactly happened in that invisible and difficult-to-name space between intention and action? That mysterious and often entirely unexplored territory, the gap between who you are right now and who you are trying to become, is precisely what two extraordinary books have dedicated their entire pages to illuminating with remarkable clarity and care. James Clear's Atomic Habits and Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit have each, in their own distinct voice and method, become defining texts in the modern conversation about human behavior and lasting personal transformation. Together reaching tens of millions of readers around the world and reshaping how both science and storytelling approach the endlessly human question of what real and lasting change actually requires. The first thing both books agree on, and perhaps the most profound insight either of them offers, is that most people fundamentally misunderstand what a habit actually is at its core. The common assumption is that a habit is simply something you do repeatedly, a behavior practiced over time until it becomes second nature and automatic. But the deeper truth both authors uncover through research and through vivid and memorable storytelling is that a habit is not merely an action, it is a neurological loop, a circuit quietly etched into the brain through repetition, linking a cue to a routine and that routine to a reward. Duhigg describes how the cue and reward become neurologically intertwined the more they occur together. That precise observation holds enormous weight. It means the habit is not just what you do, it is what your brain has quietly learned to crave and anticipate long before you consciously decide anything at all. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how certain places, specific times of day, or particular emotional states seem to pull you almost magnetically towards certain behaviors without any deliberate or conscious choice? That's the loop running silently in the background of your mind, firing before your awareness even catches up with what is actually happening inside you. Clear approaches this same psychological territory from a slightly different and deeply practical angle, focusing on what he calls the 4 laws of behavior change. Make the cue obvious, make the habit attractive, make the action easy, and make the reward satisfying. What is immediately striking about this framework is the way it fundamentally reframes the question of willpower. Neither book positions willpower as the true and reliable hero of transformation.
Instead, both authors make a compelling case that relying on motivation and discipline alone is an inherently fragile long-term strategy, because those internal resources constantly fluctuate with mood, stress, sleep, and shifting circumstance. The environment surrounding you, the visibility of the cue, the amount of friction built around a particular behavior, these are the quiet levers that ultimately govern whether a habit takes root or eventually collapses under the accumulated pressure of ordinary daily life. Clear writes that you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Even the first half of that observation is worth sitting with for a long and honest moment. Reflect, how often have you placed all of your energy into the goal itself, treating it as the entire destination, rather than examining the invisible system of small daily choices quietly carrying you toward it? One of the most emotionally resonant sections in The Power of Habit centers on a concept Duhigg calls the keystone habit, the idea that certain habits, once established with genuine consistency, create an unexpected ripple effect of other positive changes almost without deliberate additional effort.
He explores through research how regular exercise, for instance, tends to radiate outward, influencing sleep quality, nutritional choices, and mental focus, not because those areas are logically connected on the surface, but because the brain, once rewired by one successful and repeated loop, becomes far more receptive to building others alongside it. There is something genuinely and deeply hopeful embedded in this discovery. It suggests that meaningful transformation does not always demand a complete and exhausting overhaul of every behavior at once. Sometimes it only requires identifying the right single thread to pull, the one modest and consistent change that quietly unlocks the rest. Does that remind you of a shift in your own life that appeared unremarkable at first, yet quietly began rearranging your days in ways you never fully expected? Clear adds another dimension to this conversation through what he calls identity-based habits, and it may be the most psychologically precise and emotionally resonant insight offered across either book. Most people, he observes, approach the desire for change from the outside in. They focus on the outcome they want, choose a process to pursue it, and quietly hope their sense of self catches up eventually. But the more durable path, Clear argues, runs in the exact opposite direction. When a person begins genuinely seeing themselves as someone who values health, creativity, or focused discipline, not as an aspirational goal projected into the future, but as a present and lived self-concept, the behavior begins to flow more naturally and consistently from that internal story. Every small, repeated action becomes a quiet vote cast for a particular kind of person. Clear notes that every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. That framing is quietly and profoundly revolutionary in the most human sense. It transforms even the smallest daily choice into a subtle act of deliberate self-authorship. Ask yourself honestly, what story are you currently telling yourself about who you fundamentally are, and is that story expanding your sense of what is possible for you, or quietly narrowing it day by day without you fully noticing? Both books also wrestle with the honest and often uncomfortable question of relapse, of what truly happens when the habit breaks down despite sincere effort, and this is where their depth becomes most apparent and most human. Duhigg explores the neuroscience of craving through detailed case studies showing how the brain continues to anticipate the familiar reward of a habit even long after the habit has been interrupted, which explains why simply deciding to stop a behavior so often proves insufficient over time.
The craving persists and remains active even when the routine has long since disappeared. Clear takes a more philosophical stance on the same challenge, arguing that the real danger is never missing a habit once. It is the story you build about yourself after missing it. One missed day is data. 2 missed days in a row is the beginning of a different and competing habit. The distinction often lives entirely within the narrative a person constructs around what a lapse means about them. Have you ever turned one difficult day into sweeping evidence that real change is simply not possible for you, and then watched that quiet story begin to behave like its own self-fulfilling loop? What makes both Atomic Habits and The Power of Habit continue to resonate long after the final page is the way they choose to position the reader, not as someone broken who needs fixing, not as someone fundamentally lacking in character or willpower, but as someone whose brain is operating exactly as it was designed to do, efficiently, automatically, and without personal judgment. The insight both books arrive at, through genuinely different paths, is that habits are not the enemy of freedom. It is that understanding the hidden architecture of your own habits may be the most honest and empowering form of self-knowledge available to any person willing to look clearly at how their days are actually structured. Together, these 2 books build a portrait of the human mind as something deeply and genuinely changeable, not through dramatic willpower or sudden revelation, but through careful and patient attention to the small, repeated, almost invisible structures woven into the ordinary texture of everyday life. They remind you that real transformation rarely resembles transformation while it is still occurring. It looks like showing up on a quiet and unremarkable Tuesday, doing one small thing differently than the day before, and trusting that somewhere beneath conscious awareness, the loop is slowly and surely being rewritten in your favor. Books aren't just stories, they're mirrors that help us understand ourselves better. Comment below, which book should we dive into next? If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe for more thoughtful book analysis. This video uses AI-generated audio and visuals for educational purposes only. This is just one reader's personal thoughts and interpretations.